My name is Ida McKinley. I am 78 years old. I have been a widow for almost 3 decades, and for 15, I lost my only son, Tyler. But before you think this is just another grief story, I need to ask you something. What would you do? What if your dead son's number appeared on your cell phone screen at 3 in the morning? I know what it looks like. I know what you must be thinking. But I also thought that certain things just couldn't happen. Until they happen. Until the silence of my house is broken by a vibration, a name on the screen, and a voice that should no longer exist. If you've ever lost someone, if you've ever missed someone to the point of talking to the portrait of the departed, you will understand me. You will feel, perhaps, the same chill that ran down my spine when I answered that call, and I heard my son say, "Mom, where am I?" Today, I'm going to tell you what happened that night, and everything that came after. But I warn you right away. Some doors, when they open, they no longer close. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know one thing. Nothing that happened that night was a dream. It was not the imagination of a lonely mother, nor the effect of medicine, nor the delirium of longing. At 3:27 in the morning, with the house plunged into thick silence, my cell phone vibrated, and his name appeared on the screen. Tyler, my son, buried 15 years ago. I answered with trembling hands, and on the other side, the voice that I would give anything to hear again. He whispered, "Mom, it's dark here. Where am I?" From that moment on, nothing was the same. And if you've come this far, it's because you feel deep in your chest that some pains don't die with time, and that a mother's love, even after death, still tries to find a way. If this story touches your heart, if you feel that you are not alone listening to this, I humbly ask you to enjoy this video, to subscribe, not as a number, but as someone who has also expected an impossible call. Your support gives me the strength to tell this difficult memory, and maybe, together, we will find some answer. The day before that call, everything seemed normal, but only on the outside. Anyone who looks at my life from afar sees routine. A clean backyard, a porch with rocking chairs, an old white house with ever-open curtains and silences that no one hears. But inside, my dear, it's another world. I wake up every day at 6 a.m., even though I have no obligation. I make the same weak coffee that Tyler hated, wipe the sink with the same cloth, wipe the floor as if I were going to have a visitor. But no one comes. Nobody cares. The old radio is on just to keep me company. Sometimes, I play the church tapes that his father liked. But what occupies my heart the most is Tyler's room. I never touched it. His sneakers are still leaning next to the bed, his left foot a little turned, as he left it. The blue t-shirt folded on top of the wooden chair that he painted himself with a school brush. The baseball-shaped lampshade, turned off for years, but still smells like a teenager. On the nightstand, the portrait of him smiling, and next to it, the old cell phone. A black Motorola with worn keys. Buried with him, but returned by the funeral home by mistake. At the time, I wanted to give it back, but then, kept, and I never had the courage to turn it off. On that day, Tuesday, August 13th, something worried me early on. The sky had a strange color, as if it were dirty. The heat was muggy, but the wind was cold, and I was distressed. One thing in the chest, you know? As if my heart knew something that my head still didn't understand. I went to Bonaventure Cemetery with my bouquet of white lilies, as I always do on Sundays. But it wasn't Sunday. It was Tuesday. I can't explain why I went. I sat in front of Tyler's grave and stood there, quietly, as if waiting for something to happen. "Is everything okay there, my son?" I asked softly, as I always did. I felt a shiver down my back, the kind of cold that doesn't come from the wind, but from inside the skin. I returned home before dusk. The sky appeared darker than usual. When I entered the kitchen, I went to prepare a potato soup. A simple dish, but one that always reminds me of the days when he came home from school tired and asked, "With toast, Mom?" As I stirred the pot, I heard a dry noise coming from the living room. I went to see. The cell phone. His cell phone. It had fallen off the shelf. No one touched it. No one entered. He simply fell, and he stood there on the floor, turned around, as if he wanted to attract attention. I approached slowly. I looked at him for a few minutes without the courage to pick it up. I was afraid. Fear of something I don't even know how to name. You know, that kind of fear that is not of a ghost, nor of a thief, but rather to remember too much, afraid of feeling it all over again. I didn't touch the device. I just went back to the kitchen and tried to act as if nothing had happened, but I couldn't eat. The soup cooled on the table, and the TV was on without sound while I stared into the void. At 10 p.m., I went to bed. The whole house was different. The sound of the wind seemed to come from within the walls. The lights flickered slightly, as if there was something wrong with the power. And for the first time in years, I prayed on my knees, as I did when he was little and got sick. Sir, prepare me for anything. Just don't let me go crazy. I woke up at 2:43 a.m., panting, with the impression of having heard footsteps in the hallway. I got up, walked slowly to Tyler's room, opened the door, and everything was in place. But the smell of the room had changed. He was stronger, latest, as if he had been there. I sat on the edge of his bed and stared at the darkness for a while, waiting for sleep to return. But what came back? It was something else. 3:27 a.m. My cell phone vibrated, and life, as I knew it, changed. Sometimes I ask myself, do mothers feel it before? Does our hearts warn? Because that day, everything seemed to tell me that something was going to happen, but I didn't know how to listen. What about you? Have you ever had this kind of feeling? An intuition, a shiver, a presentiment that only later made sense? If you've experienced something like this, comment below, I believe, or I felt it. It will do me good to know that I'm not alone in this. But that call was just the beginning. The real question still haunted me. How was it possible to hear the voice of someone who had been dead for 15 years, and what he wanted to tell me, before it was too late? When the phone vibrated again at 3:27 a.m., my heart just stopped. I looked at the screen as if I saw a ghost entering through the front door. There was the name, Tyler, with that simple font, the same way it appeared when he called me saying he was going to be late, or asking me to pick him up at Ben's house. For a moment I thought it was some kind of hallucination. I blinked, took a deep breath, and it was still there. Tyler is calling. With a trembling hand, I slid my finger across the screen. Answered. My hello came out more like a whisper than a word. On the other side, only silence. But it was not an empty silence. There was something there, something stuck, distant, as if the call was crossing kilometers or centuries. I heard a faint breath. It wasn't a bad line hiss. It was a real breath. Human. Frail. And then, he spoke. Mother. The voice that came out of that phone was his. It was my boy's. With the same softness, the same intonation, even that way of lengthening the mother, as I did when I wanted to be moved. Mom, where am I? I was floored. My eyes watered right away. I was speechless, as if my words had died inside my throat. It's dark here, and it's cold. I can't move. My skin crawled all over. He continued, it smells like wet earth. And there's something on top of me. I wanted to scream, to say that it was just a nightmare, but it wasn't. He mentioned the winter of 2009, the car accident I had on my way home from Mass, and only he knew. He talked about Lucky, his puppy, who got sick and we buried him in the backyard, 2 weeks before Tyler died. I couldn't breathe. Mom, are you still there? He asked. And all I could say was, I'm son. I'm here. And then, out of nowhere, the call dropped. The number disappeared from the screen. I tried to call him back, without success. Non-existent number, the message said. I turned the phone over, looked in the records. Nothing. Not even the call was saved. As if it hadn't happened. But it happened. His voice still echoed in my chest. That was not imagination. It was not a dream. It was my son, and he was asking for help. I sat on the living room floor, with the phone in my hands, and cried like a child. An old cry, contained for 15 years, which I didn't even know how to release anymore. That night, I knew. Tyler was trying to talk to me. But why? And how? Would it be a breach on the other side? A cry for help? Or something much deeper, which I wasn't ready to understand yet? Whatever it was, I knew it wouldn't end there, because that call was just the beginning. And what would come next? It would be even more disturbing. The next morning, I woke up with heavy eyes and my body as if I had been through a fever. The sunlight pierced the curtain like a thin, silent razor. I went straight to the kitchen, prepared the coffee as always, but nothing tasted. I sat at the table looking at my cell phone as if it were a strange animal. Had that really happened? Or was I losing my reason for good? Because if someone told me this story, I would doubt it too. Maybe he would say that it was neediness, that our minds play tricks when longing becomes too old a pain. But it was not an invention. I know what I heard. Even so, I got dressed, grabbed my bag, and went to the pharmacy, as if looking for relief. But it wasn't medicine I wanted. It was confirmation, explanation, a sign that I could still trust what I felt. Carol was at the counter. She's known me for many years, since Tyler was little. He was always kind to me, with that sweet way of someone who knows that life is not easy for everyone. When he saw me enter, he smiled. "Good morning, Mrs. Ida. Is that okay?" I hesitated. Then I approached and said quietly, "I need to tell you something. But do you promise you won't laugh?" Carol put her hand on my arm and led me to the corner of the pharmacy, where customers rarely go. There, among the shelves of cotton swabs and shampoos, I counted. Not everything, just a piece. He said that I received a call in the middle of the night, from a number that no longer exists, that the voice was known, who called me Mom. She listened to me in silence, with attentive eyes. Then she gave that sigh of someone who will try to be delicate with the truth. "Look, it may have been a very vivid dream, or perhaps a reaction from your meds. You take that pressure one, right? Sometimes it causes mental confusion, especially at dawn." I nodded, but inside, I wasn't convinced. Because confusion doesn't make us hear details that no one else would know. I returned home with more doubt than when I left. I sat in the living room and took out my cell phone. I started to poke around the old things, the ones that we don't even remember anymore that we kept. I found Tyler's old mailbox. There was still the recording with his voice. "Hi, it's Tyler. You can leave a message. I'll get back to you." It hurt me like a slow stab. I repeated it about 5 times. It was him. The same voice, the same intonation. But what I heard that night, it was different. He had life. I was afraid. And he had pain. I tried to think with a cool head. Has someone managed to hack the old number? But who would do such a thing? And why? I thought of a scam. I thought of a prank. But I soon discarded it. It was too personal, too true. Even trying to rationalize, something inside me said, it was real. He called me. And the scariest thing, it didn't seem like a visit of the spirit. It seemed like a cry for help. And the more I thought, the more the question came to me. If he managed to make contact, will he try again? And if you try, am I ready to hear what he still has to say? 2 days have passed since that dawn. 2 days in which my head turned a whirlwind, and my heart seemed to live between 2 worlds, what is and what once was. I started to avoid even looking at my cell phone. I left it face down, as if that could prevent the inevitable. But even without touching, I knew he was going to play again. And it did. Again at 3:27 in the morning. I woke up seconds before, as if my soul already knew something was approaching. When I saw Tyler's name flashing on the screen, my body reacted differently this time. It was not fear, nor fright. It was a mixture of despair and hope. Answered. "Mom, it's me." His voice was clearer, still low but clear. He looked tired, weak. "Mom, where am I?" My chest tightened. "Son, you died 15 years ago." He was silent for a moment. "To die? I remember the motorcycle, of the lighthouse, of the noise. After, everything went dark. But I'm here. It's dark again, cold, and there's wood all around me. It's damp. It smells like an old flower, Mom. Dried flower, you know?" I started shaking. His every word confirmed the impossible. "There is something in my pocket. I'm trying to catch it." Silence. Just his breathing on the other side. "It's my cell phone, Mom. The old one. That black one. I had asked to be buried with him. Do you remember?" I remembered. It was a request he had made half-jokingly when he was 16. He said he wanted to be buried with his cell phone if he had a signal on the other side. We laughed at the time. I never took it seriously. But now that request seemed to be the only bridge between us. "Mom, don't leave me here. Everything is at a standstill. I don't know how much time has passed." My throat closed. "Tyler, you're not alone. I'm here. I'm listening to you." And then, as if some force was pulling him back, the call began to fail. "Mom, get me out, please. Not me, here." And it fell. Again. I screamed alone in the dark. I knelt on the living room carpet with my cell phone against my chest and cried like I hadn't cried in years. It was not an apparition. It was him, prisoner, buried, and asking for help. I stood there for hours, staring at nothing, with a question swirling inside me like an endless echo. If he is really where he says he is, do I have the courage to go there? I'm here opening my heart, telling something that no one would ever believe if I hadn't felt it firsthand. And if you're still with me so far, listening to all this, I ask you, leave a like on this video, subscribe here to the channel. It's not by number, no. It's just that there is still a lot that I need to share with those who have the courage to listen. But what happened next? Everything changed. Because when we start listening to what should be silent, other things also start to wake up. And I had no idea what awaited me the next night. The day after that second call, I could no longer pretend that everything was fine. My face carried the weariness of sleepless nights, and my soul seemed torn between this world and another, where my son asked for help with a voice that only a mother would recognize. I decided I couldn't carry it alone. I grabbed my bag and went to the First Baptist Church on the corner of Gordon Street, where I have sat on the same wooden bench for over 20 years. Reverend Paul saw me coming in and came right up to meet me. "Mrs. Ida, you are pale. What happened?" We sat in the front seat. I took a deep breath and counted. Everything. The calls, Tyler's words, the certainty that grew inside me that he was trapped, in some way that no one understood. He listened to me patiently, as he always did, but when he finished, he put his hand on my shoulder and said fondly, "Sometimes grief finds loopholes in reality, and the heart of the lady he has not yet accepted." I wanted to believe that he was right, that it was just nostalgia, just accumulated pain, but my God, I knew it wasn't. I returned home, still without answers. That same afternoon, I called an old friend of Tyler's, Ben, now a police officer, a family man, but who one day shared entire afternoons with my son in the back room, playing video games and talking about music. When I answered, my voice came out shaky. "Ben, I need to ask you something difficult." He came to visit me that night. When I talked about the cell phone, the details that Tyler described, he turned pale. "Donaida, I remember the burial. I helped her choose the suit, and I remember the cell phone. It was that old man, with a sticker on the back. He wanted to be buried with him. Do you remember?" I remembered. But to hear from someone else, someone outside my head, that took me off my feet. I thanked him, unable to hide the tears. At that time I knew he wasn't making anything up. What he felt in his pocket, there in that dark place, was real. Deep down my heart screamed, "Go to him. It shows that you believe." So that same night, I grabbed my white lilies, put on the blue coat Tyler liked, and made my way to Bonaventure Cemetery. The gate was already closed, but I knew a way behind. I walked among the tombs, with the headlight of the bag illuminating the stones. When I got to his tombstone, I knelt on the cold ground and was silent. For a while, I only heard the sound of crickets and the wind in the trees. Then I put my hand to the ground and whispered, "If it's really you, my son, give me a sign. Anything." I stayed there until dawn. No light, no sound. I returned home with a heavy heart, but determined to wait. At 4:30 in the morning, I went to the living room to get water. And then, the old TV on the shelf turned on by itself. It was on the AV channel, where the VHS is, and in the video, he was, Tyler, sitting on the edge of the bed, with the guitar on his lap, singing that song he composed at the age of 15. The control was in the drawer. No one touched it. Only God and I know what I felt at that time. But there was more. In the reflection of the television screen, I swear I saw something behind me, a still, quiet figure. I turned around in a fright, but there was nothing. Or ringworm, because that night, more than ever, I felt like I wasn't alone. But what did that mean? And if Tyler made it to my house, what else could cross that invisible line between the two worlds? The next night, something inside me just wouldn't let me sleep. I turned over in bed as if I heard a call without sound, that feeling that only a mother knows, like when we feel our child sick even before the fever rises. I got up slowly, got dressed, grabbed Tyler's phone, and walked quietly to the door. It was almost 3 in the morning. The street was deserted, just the branches of the trees dancing in the Savannah wind. I took my old car and went to Bonaventure Cemetery. At the side entrance, Marvin, the security guard for the night, recognized me from afar. "Mrs. Ida, are you okay?" I forced a smile and said, "Better now. I just need a moment with my boy." He hesitated, but opened the gate. "Everything is calm around here. No one but you passed." I thanked him and walked slowly to the grave. When I got close, I felt my body freeze. The land, it wasn't like last time. It had a strange relief, as if someone had dug it out and then disguised it. I crouched slowly, touched the ground. It was too wet, as if it had been stirred. I looked back and called, "Marvin, have you seen anyone here these days?" He approached, turned on the flashlight. He looked, frowned. No, not even a soul alive. But this wasn't like that. I knelt right there, in front of my son's tombstone. I held his cell phone with both hands and closed my eyes. "If it's you, my son, talk to me." And then, like an obedient whisper from the universe, the phone vibrated. I almost dropped it in fright. The screen lit up. "Call received. Tyler." I answered, holding my breath. "Mom?" His voice sounded firmer, as if each call brought him back, piece by piece. "It's me. I'm here." My heart was beating out of rhythm. "Son, where are you? What's happening to you?" He was silent for a moment and then said, "I'm not alone here. There are others. Many. But I'm closer to the exit. Because you're listening." My hand trembled. "Departure? What way out, son?" He took a deep breath. "I don't know how to explain it. It's as if I had between two doors, and your voice is pushing one of them." "Tyler, do you remember what happened to you?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Not everything. Just pieces. I remember the motorcycle, impact, of the noise, and then just this place, dark, stationary. But now, there's something moving, as if the ground was opening." The phrase cut me like a knife. "Are you trying to come back?" "I'm trying to get out, Mom. But it is not possible alone. You'll know, when it opens." "Open what, my son?" I asked, almost screaming. But the call was already dropping. The words shuffled and disappeared. I stayed there kneeling, alone, with the night enveloping everything around. The tears came with force. A stronger wind blew through the trees, and for the first time, I felt that maybe he was right there. So close I could almost touch it. I lowered my head and leaned my forehead against the tombstone. I felt a heat rise from the earth, as if something down there was pulsating. At that moment, I knew. Something was asking me to do the unthinkable, and as absurd as it sounded, I started to consider. Open. The tomb. The earth. The coffin. And the question that burned in my chest was only one. What am I going to find, if you have the courage to open it? Because sometimes, the truth that we fear the most, it is the only one capable of freeing those we love. The next day, the world seemed to move more slowly. I dragged myself around the house as someone walking inside a dense dream, still with the smell of wet earth on my nose and the echo of my son's voice in my soul. I sat in the living room, turned off the TV, and allowed myself to do what I had avoided for years. Open Tyler's old box of memories. It was stored high in the closet, where my eyes could not easily reach, perhaps as an unconscious way of keeping certain memories quiet. But that morning called for courage. I opened it slowly, as if I were invading something sacred. Inside were the school's medals, the drawings scribbled on the back of notebooks, movie tickets, and a sheet of paper folded several times. When I opened it, I immediately recognized it was the symbolic testament he wrote in an 8th grade activity. The teacher had asked the class to imagine what they would leave for the world if they died too soon. Tyler had taken it too seriously, as he always did when it came to death. His shaky handwriting read, "If I ever die young, I want to be buried with my cell phone. I may need to communicate from somewhere. If there's anything after that here, I'll try to go back." I read it as if reading a forgotten prophecy. And then, like lightning crossing my chest, I remembered his diary. I ran out to the bedroom, opened the nightstand drawer, and there it was, covered with stickers and time marks. I sat on the bed and started flipping. The first pages had common things: passions, song lyrics, outbursts. But after page 37, everything changed. Dream notes, visions of the burial itself, descriptions of a dark corridor, a heavy sky, and the phrase that was repeated several times: "Time is not what it seems." That chilled me inside. He sensed it. He saw it. And maybe he left traces waiting for me to find them. On the last page, almost illegible because it was so faded. He wrote, "If one day I come back, it's because someone believed." I closed the journal with trembling hands. I couldn't wait any longer. I went to the law office of Thomas Blake, an old acquaintance in the city, and asked, "I want to start the exhumation process." He looked at me scared, but with respect. "Are you sure what you are asking?" I took a deep breath. "I do." He explained to me that it was a delicate process, which could take weeks, and that I would need to justify it to the city hall and the cemetery. But at that moment, nothing else mattered. My son was asking to leave, and I was going to open the door, even if it was with my own hands. Sometimes, when we love too much, we end up crossing limits that we didn't even know existed. And what I found out in that will, it was like a flame lighting everything again in here. Because when a child leaves clues, it's because he trusted that one day his mother would understand. What about you? Ever had the feeling that someone who has left tried to leave you a sign, a phrase, an object, a dream? If this has happened to you, comment here. I understand, or it's true, because there are things that only our hearts know. But time, as Tyler wrote, is not what it seems. And what awaited me in the next few nights, it was going to prove to me that this story was just beginning. I know what the law says. I know I had to wait, that I needed signed paper, permission, a stamp. But a mother's heart does not recognize bureaucracy. When we hear our child crying for help, even if it's underground, there's no protocol to hold it. With each passing night, the feeling increased, as if he were getting closer and closer, or farther and farther away, and I wasn't going to risk losing him again. So, I made the craziest and surest decision of my life. I was going to open the grave. No permission, no process, only with courage, flashlight, and prayer. I called Ben. He took a long time to respond, but deep down, I think he was already expecting it. "Are you absolutely sure, Mrs. Ida? Ben, when you have a child and he calls you from the depths of the earth, you'll know." He was silent for a while, then said, "I'll help you, but it will have to be careful, and with discretion." I also called Marvin, the security guard. He had seen too much to doubt me. "You scare me, Mrs. Ida, but I'm all for it." I spent the rest of the day buying what I needed: key money, lanterns, thick blankets, and 2 shovels that I disguised with garden bags. That evening, just before midnight, we met near the side gate of Bonaventure Cemetery. The wind blew differently. The sky was clear, but the air smelled strange, like when it rains at dawn. Marvin opened the lock and guided us through the back. We walk in silence, as if even our breaths could wake the dead. Arriving at the grave, I knelt beside the tombstone and laid my hand down. "I'm here, son. Now it's you waiting for me." We started digging slowly, taking turns digging so as not to make so much noise. The earth was lighter than we expected, as if it had been moved a short time ago. With each shovel we pulled, I felt a mixture of fear and faith, a duel between the impossible and what my heart had already accepted as truth. After an hour, Ben stopped and said, "There's something here." The light from the flashlight showed an object wrapped in plastic. It was Tyler's guitar, the same one he loved to play out of tune. It was broken in half, but it still had the red pick that he said was lucky. Further down, the blue cap appeared, dirty with dirt, with the brim worn out. My chest tightened. It was his things, untouched since the day of the burial. And there, among them, was what froze me the most inside: the black cell phone, the old one, the way I remembered it. When I touched it, he vibrated. The screen lit up and a message popped up. "I'm almost there." My eyes filled with tears. Ben and Marvin looked at each other. It is not possible," said Marvin. But at that point, logic had long since been left behind. They cleared the rest of the earth, until the wood of the coffin appeared. It was intact, no sign of violation. It was as if it had been sealed with more than screws. I knelt down, put my fingers on the lid, closed my eyes, and I asked very quietly, "Do you hear me, son?" No response came, but I felt it, something inside that coffin. I was waiting, and when Ben held the lever to open, something made the phone vibrate once again in my hand. But this time the message was not only his. Era of another number. And that's when everything started to change. The sound of the wood coming loose was like thunder within the silence of the night. When Ben forced the last lock on the coffin, my heart was beating so loudly that it drowned out any thought. The lid lifted slowly, every inch revealing what none of us were ready to see. I expected bones. I expected an emptiness. Or perhaps nothing. But what I saw there, it took my breath away. Tyler's body was intact. Intact. As if he had been placed there the night before. His face was serene. Clean. His hair exactly as it was on the day of the funeral. The black t-shirt with the logo of the favorite band. The dark jeans. The shoelaces of the sneakers were still tied. And the scariest thing, the cell phone on his chest pulsated a blue light, faint but alive, as if it were a heart beating in another rhythm from another time. Marvin took 2 steps back, making the sign of the cross with his trembling hand. Ben was static, looking as if watching something that goes against everything he has learned in life. I, kneeling there, could only cry. It was not the cry of mourning. It was a new, confused cry, loaded with everything. Fear, love, faith, and that deep pain of seeing someone we love suspended between what he is and what he should be. I approached slowly, put my hands on his, and they were warm, not hot, but also not icy as is expected from death. There was heat. Was there life? His perfume, the one he had worn since he was 15, took the air. A woody, sweet smell that seemed to embrace me entirely. It was him. It was my boy. Ben discreetly pulled his phone out of his pocket and took a picture. No one will believe it, Mrs. Ida. I could barely answer. My fingers intertwined his, and in that touch I felt it. He was still there. Somewhere. He was still there. And then, the cell phone on his chest vibrated. The screen lit up my son's face like a beacon. And there, a new message appeared. Take me home. Now. I looked at the 2 men next to me, my mouth dry, the world spinning. We can't leave him here. Ben hesitated, but then nodded. Let's cover it again. Pretend nothing was touched. And we will do it carefully. We took the body, the cell phone still vibrating, and placed it on the blanket I had taken. Every move was like carrying a miracle in your hands. Marvin took it upon himself to close the grave again, erasing any trace of what we had done. No one could know. Not yet. In the car, as she covered Tyler's body with another blanket, the blue light from the cell phone continued to pulse. And there, driving back home, with my son's body in the back seat, a certainty was born inside me. His death. It was never complete. Something held him back. Something kept him between the worlds. And maybe, just maybe, I was the only one capable of bringing him back. If this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, will it help me to carry it forward? Like and subscribe here to the channel. It makes more difference than you think. Sometimes we share pain so that someone, in silence, feels less alone. But you still haven't seen what happened when I put Tyler back inside our house. Because it was there, between 4 walls and a frozen past, that something really woke up. And what he revealed, everything changed. The road back home was long, even though it was short. Each turn seemed to cross a veil, as if the city was asleep, and me, Ben, and Marvin were crossing to a place where time no longer obeyed the same rules. When I parked in front of my house, I looked at the white gate, at the porch swing, and I had the strange feeling that I was bringing my son home for the first time, like the day we left the hospital, with him wrapped in the blue blanket. Only now, he was shrouded in silence, and in something that no one there could explain. The light from his phone had stopped pulsing, but the heat in his body was still there. We entered through the front door without turning on the lights. The air was dense, still. We led the body slowly to his old room. The bed was still made, the sneakers in the same corner, the t-shirt folded into the chair. Nothing there had been touched in 15 years, and somehow, it seemed that everything was waiting for him. We adjust our bodies on the clean sheets. I pulled the blanket up to his chest and sat on the edge of the bed. I touched his face with the palm of my hand, and he was still warm. "Mommy brought you home, my son," whispered, and that's when the house began to react. The hallway lights flickered, one by one. The old radio in the living room turned on by itself, and a low, familiar melody began to play that cut me inside. It was Tyler's favorite song, that melancholic folk he always listened to before bed. Marvin stood in the doorway, his eyes wide. "Did you see that?" Ben approached the dresser. "This radio is not even digital, Mrs. Ida. It shouldn't even work anymore." I went to the kitchen, filled a glass of water, and left it on the table next to the bed. I felt like that's what a mother would do, like he was going to wake up at any moment, saying he had a nightmare. I sat in the rocking chair next to the window and stood there, watching. The house was silent, but not a normal silence. It was as if something was lurking, waiting. At 3 o'clock sharp, the cell phone on his chest lit up again, not with a common notification, but with a more intense, bluish light, which spread across the walls of the room like a reflection of water. And then, without anyone touching anything, the sound began to come directly from the device. It was not a call, nor a speakerphone. It was as if the cell phone had become a mouth, a bridge. The voice came slowly, slurred. "I'm coming, but I'm not alone." Marvin dropped the lantern. Ben turned pale. I didn't move, because something in that voice, it wasn't just Tyler's. There was more. It had something behind, or inside, like an echo of other mixed presences. I felt it down my spine. That was no longer just a reunion. It was a crossing. And now, the house was open. I knew that what was coming was not just him, but what else would come along with my son. And was I ready to let it in? Because that night, the door that opened, it was no longer possible to close. The kitchen clock was 3:12 a.m. when I felt it. I heard no noise, no alarm, no clear signal, but inside my chest, something awoke. I returned to Tyler's room, and the light from his phone no longer pulsed. It was blacked out, resting on his chest as if he had fulfilled his mission. The house was silent, but there was electricity in the air, the kind you feel on your skin, like when a storm is about to fall. I approached the bed, sat slowly in the rocking chair and watched. His face looked even more alive. The skin that had been pale now had a slight flush on her cheeks. The hands, which I had held cold and motionless, gave a small spasm in the fingers. It was barely noticeable, but I saw it. Her eyelids began to twitch, first just a tick, then a stronger contraction. I held my breath, and there, in that dawn that seemed to never end, my son breathed, not a breath of air, like someone waking up from a nightmare, but a breath, soft, tearing a 15-year silence. "Tyler," whispered. Marvin entered the room at that moment, holding the cross he brought from the car. "Did you see it?" I could only point it out. Ben arrived next, cell phone in hand, recording everything, even though he was not sure what he was documenting. And then he opened his eyes. They were not the eyes of a 17-year-old boy. They were darker, denser, as if they had crossed places that no one should know. They looked straight at mine, and then he spoke, the voice faint, but loaded with something that none of us could ignore. They followed me. My body froze. "Who, son?" He turned his face slowly and repeated, almost in a whisper that shook the entire room. They don't like the light." The lights in the house began to flicker. The hallway lamp went out for good. The mirrors fogged up, as if someone had breathed against them. And shadows. Shadows began to form at the corners of the wall, but they had no source. They were not ours, and they were not quiet. Moved. They pulsated. Ben took a step back. "We have to get out of here." But I couldn't leave. He had just returned, and even if something horrible had come along, I wasn't going to abandon my boy again. Sometimes I think that certain memories refuse to die. They are in the corners of the house, in the objects stored, in the songs that play alone in the middle of the night, that smell of childhood, a distant sound, a quick figure in the mirror. There are memories that mark us forever. What about you? Do you have any memories that came back out of nowhere, as if time had reopened a door? If so, tell me in the comments. You can write "I remember," "I felt it," or even tell what it was. It will be beautiful to see how many memories still live out there, hidden. But what I saw that morning was more than memory. It was a warning, something that came with it. I didn't want to be silent. And the question that echoed inside the house, among the shadows that multiplied, was, if he came back, what else managed to get through that door? Tyler's breathing was steadying little by little, as if he was learning to live again. But the look, that look was not the same as my boy's who ran to school with his backpack on his back and his hair messy. It was denser, deeper, as if he had aged inside, as if he had seen too much. We sat with him in the room in silence. No one had the courage to ask questions, but he began to speak, first with long pauses, as if he needed to translate what he had experienced into words that we could understand. It's not heaven, nor hell. It's an in-between place, where time does not run like here. Ben wrote everything down, but his hands trembled. Marvin leaned against the wall, glancing sideways into the corners of the room, as if waiting for some of those shadows to move again. There are no days there. There are no nights. Memories, fragments, echoes of things that once were. But there is also presences. Tyler said that looking straight at me. I held his hand. Have you been there all this time? He nodded, and his eyes watered. I was lucky. They were imprisoned without even remembering who they were. He told of souls that floated aimlessly, like pieces of forgotten stories. People who died alone. People who were buried without a name, without prayer. They keep waiting for someone to remember them. But when no one remembers, they black out. Those words hurt me deeply. How many mothers have not been able to keep the memory of a child alive? How many souls have been lost in this limbo for lack of a whispered name? A portrait on the wall? Tyler squeezed my hand tighter. Mom, you held me. The room, the smell of the clothes, the cell phone. You didn't let me disappear. I cried softly. Because everything I did in these 15 years, I did it for love. And now he was telling me that this was the thread that brought him back. But then, in a lower voice, he said, but it came at a price. The room became colder. Before I left there, a presence warned me. One, guardian, I think. He had no face, but he had a voice. He said that if I passed, others would try to pass too, and that not everyone wanted to come back for the same reason. Tyler looked at the mirror, which was now completely blurry, as if someone had blown through it. Some want to take revenge, others to hide. They just want to run away. I looked around. The shadows were sharper. The radio played softly, but it was as if the whole house was listening to every word. When you opened the coffin, the portal broke. And now, there are cracks between the two worlds. Marvin swallowed. What does that mean, kid? Tyler looked at me seriously. It means that it will not stop here. Others will come, and not everyone will like what they find. I got up, closed the window, and pulled the curtain. The wind was blowing stronger now. It wasn't just a reunion. It was a war of times, of absences, of poorly buried memories. And the worst was yet to come, because there was a name that Tyler hadn't said yet, a name he whispered that morning, and that I never imagined I would hear again. And that name, everything changed. That night was different from all the others. Claremont Street, where I've lived my whole life, has turned into a strange place, as if the air itself was waiting for something to happen. It started with the crackles of light. The lamp in the room flashed 3 times before going out. Then it was the refrigerator, the clock on the wall, until the power of the whole house disappeared for good. I was in absolute darkness, listening to the ticking of my own heart. Marvin ran to the window and saw that the whole street was without light. The corner pole flashed, but did not light up completely. And then, the sound began, a low, grave lament that seemed to come from the bowels of the earth. It was as if someone, or something, was moaning under our feet. The dogs on the block began to howl. Little birds, even in the middle of the night, flapped their wings and crashed into the windows. The old radio in the room turned on by itself, but instead of music, a high frequency came out, which made us clench our teeth in discomfort. That's when Tyler started shaking. He was lying down, but his body arched, as if something was pulling him from the inside out. Son? Tyler? He opened his eyes, but it wasn't him there. The eyes were completely black, without reflection, and the voice that came out of his mouth, it wasn't his. She was thick, scratchy, and said things that we didn't understand. An ancient language, or a sound that was not made to be translated. Ben ran up to him, tried to grab him by the shoulders, but Tyler was seized by an inhuman force. Marvin helped, and together they managed to restrain him, even if only for a short time. I, trembling, went to the bookshelf and took my mother's Bible. It had been there for 30 years, since she left, with markings on the pages and petals dried between the leaves. I opened to the mark she always read on difficult days, and began to read aloud, with a choked throat. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Tyler's voice roared, and the sound of street wailing increased. I kept reading, even though I couldn't see properly. Your rod and your staff comfort me. The cell phone on the nightstand began to glow blue, as if it were alive, trembling, pulsing, until it exploded in light. A light that covered the entire room. And then, silence. Everything stopped. The noises, the trembling, the accelerated breathing. Tyler fell, unconscious but in one piece. The radio turned off. The dogs fell silent. Only my heart was still beating like a drum. Ben touched his neck. He's alive. Marvin knelt down, holding the cross as a shield. I stood there with the Bible against my chest, knowing that something had tried to get through, and that maybe had succeeded, because when I looked at the fogged mirror in the room, there was something written there, something that no one at home recognized, but I knew it. It was my mother's name, and she had been dead for 30 years. The next morning, as the sun was still struggling to rise through the heavy clouds, Ben walked into the kitchen with his phone in his hand and a tense stare. He agreed to come. I didn't even ask who. I knew that after what we experienced the night before, any help was valid. I sat with my hands in my lap, praying softly, as the coffee strained and the house seemed a little more alive, or maybe just more tired. 2 hours later, an old car parked in front of my house, with books piled up in the back seat. Out of it came a tall, thin gentleman with well-combed white hair and attentive eyes, Dr. Thomas Harlan, retired professor from Emory University, an expert in quantum physics, consciousness, and, as Ben said, everything that lives on the border of what they call the impossible. Harlan went straight to the point. He asked for silence, sat down by Tyler's bed, and began examining with a small device that looked like a mix of stethoscope and oscilloscope. I barely blinked. The vital signs are here, but minimal, like a song playing underwater. Ben and Marvin looked at each other. He's alive? Harlan took a deep breath. Not in what you call life. It is in resonance, a frequency between shots. Then he took the cell phone that rested on the dresser, still singed from the explosion of light from the night before. He plugged in a small cable, plugged it into an old laptop, and was silent for nearly 10 minutes, his brow furrowed, his fingers typing fast. And then, in a firm voice, he said, "This device does not operate with the system it should. It's running codes that they do not exist. They are like echoes of living memory." I approached. My heart tightened. Living memory? He looked at me tenderly. This cell phone, it's like a conductor. One channel, but not a signal. Of presence. Of memory kept alive with such strength for so long that it became matter. My whole body froze. It means that, did he come back because I never forgot it? Harlan nodded. The memory that you carried for all these years, in the flowers, in the gestures, in the preserved absence, shaped a thread, and Tyler knew how to follow that thread. I was speechless. A piece of me wanted to cry. Another wanted to thank me. And another, deeper, was afraid, because Harlan kept going. But this thread is now a trace, and if there are others, if there are stuck, disoriented consciousnesses, they can feel it, and try to follow him too. Silence fell over the room. Tyler opened his eyes slowly. He didn't seem surprised. It seemed that he already knew. He looked at me with a firmer, almost adult gaze and said only, "They are already coming. There are things that we live and keep, but maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe." Enjoy this video and subscribe, and let's make this story reach those who need it. Because sometimes, what seems crazy to some is exactly what others need to hear in order not to feel alone. And I, sitting there, between strange machines and a son lying on a bed between worlds, knew that time was running out, because when night fell again, the house would no longer be alone, and something, or someone, would cross that thin line that separates longing of oblivion. The afternoon was long, silent, and full of things that no one could say. Tyler lay down the whole time, with his eyes open but far away, as if it were already more there than here. I tried to distract him with good memories. I told him about when he lost his first tooth and thought the world was going to end, of when he peed his pants on the playground and lied saying that someone threw water. He smiled slightly, but soon his eyes filled with a certainty that pierced me like a knife. "Mom, I can't stay." My heart sank. "You just came back." He shook my hand. "But if I stay, others will follow. And they're not like me." I already knew, since he had said that he had been followed, that the portal was open, that there were others. I knew that. To have him there, the door was also open to the dark. Dr. Harlan arrived in the late afternoon with a wooden box full of wires, coils, sound emitters, and things that looked like something out of an old fictional movie. He said he couldn't guarantee anything, but that a binaural frequency-guided electromagnetic field could create a resonance barrier, and perhaps that would close the rift between the worlds. I didn't understand half of what he said, but when I looked at Tyler, I understood everything. He would try. For us. For the peace of the house. By memory. We spent the night preparing everything. We lined the floor with the wires, connected the small speakers to the four corners of the room, and positioned a circle of coarse salt around the bed. It was an improvisation between science and faith. I changed the sheets on his bed very carefully, as I did when he was little. He lay down. He was calm, almost serene. Dr. Harlan turned on the machines. A low sound began to pulse, repetitive, like a heart. The blue light coming from the cell phone returned, but this time it spread. It covered his chest, his arms, his face. A constant light, no longer pulsating. "You're my home, Mom," he whispered, "and I'll come back one day. But now I need to protect you." At that moment, I understood what it means to love to the end. It means holding the hand of the one you love, even though you know you will have to let go, and say with a torn heart, "Go." He goes back and forth when he can, I hope. Because to love is not to imprison, it is protecting. I know that you who are listening to me may have lost someone too. Perhaps he carries nostalgia that has no name. But listen to one thing. The most beautiful story is yet to happen. Stay with me until the end, because there's something you still need to see. The sound increased. The lights in the house flickered once again. The vibration was so intense that the glasses on the shelf began to clink. And for the first time since it all began, the air became light. The shadow came out of the mirror. But that's when I saw it. Something was moving outside the house, and he was not alone. That night was the most intense I have experienced in my entire life. The ritual was in full swing, and the blue light emanating from Tyler grew by the minute, filling the room with an energy I had never felt before. But along with the light, the shadows began to move again, this time aggressive, almost palpable. They tried to walk through doors, windows, as if desperately seeking to get in and reach Tyler. Ben and Marvin ran back and forth, holding doors and reinforcing makeshift barriers. While I held tight to the letter I had buried with him years ago, I took a deep breath and began to read aloud, feeling each word go through my chest and out of my mouth. "I will love you to the end, and after him." It was my promise, my strength, and somehow it seemed that every word carried power. The shadows hesitated, retreated, as if they felt the intensity of the love that crossed the worlds. Tyler looked at me, smiling with that impossible serenity, as if he could finally rest. And then it happened. He began to dissolve into the blue light, his body becoming almost transparent, pulsing with a warm glow that seemed to embrace everything around him. The shadows screamed, a high-pitched, painful sound that echoed through the house, but they faded, evaporating into thin air until nothing remained. The cell phone in his hands exploded in small sparks and fell to the ground, inert. The house shook slightly, as if breathing and then sighing in relief. She falls to her knees, exhausted and in tears, feeling the deep pain of loss, but different, lighter, charged with acceptance and love. Tyler was gone again, but this time, he had chosen, and I knew the portal was finally closed. Silence took over, and the air seemed cleaner, quieter. I sat on the floor, still holding the letter, feeling my heart heavy, and at the same time grateful. The dark forces had been defeated, and my son had left in a dignified way, protecting us all. But the memory of his look, his smile, and the light he left behind would remain forever, reminding me that true love knows no end. And now, looking around, I realized that life, even with all its losses, could go on, and that some stories, no matter how painful, end with a peace that time can't erase. But even with the house in silence, a question hammered in my mind. Is it really all over? Or are there still echoes of other worlds that await our attention? I woke up that morning with the weight of Tyler's absence more present than ever, but in a strangely light way. His room was no longer a mausoleum of frozen memories. It was a sanctuary of living memories, a space where longing coexisted with peace. I walked slowly between the made bed, the shelf of books and the old guitar, now just objects that told stories, without holding my heart in pain. I decided I couldn't let last week's experience be just a secret of mine. There were moms, dads, and youth in my community in Savannah who needed to hear, feel, and maybe even understand that grief can be turned into purpose. I began to organize meetings in the basement of the church, a small group called Those Who Stayed, where we shared memories, tears, and laughter. At first, people arrived cautiously, suspicious that my story might seem like fantasy, but little by little they surrendered, touched by the fact that someone understood the real pain, the one that does not disappear with time. Ben and Marvin remained close, silent but present, discreet guardians of an experience few would have dared to imagine. Harlan, for his part, published an academic article in an obscure journal on persistent consciousness in affective fields, and as expected, few believed it. But I knew he knew, and that was enough. Each visit to Bonaventure Cemetery became a ritual, no longer one of loss, but of recognition. Fresh flowers, slow steps, a faint smile on his face, feeling Tyler in every soft shadow among the ancient trees. What surprised me the most was to realize that, even after so much suffering, life still had room to be full, to move, to love in ways that I had not imagined. I felt his presence in the little things, in the wind playing with the leaves, in the distant song of a bird, in the smell of the lilac that bloomed in August. My mission has been transformed, to teach others to carry the memory of those who have passed away without letting the weight of absence crush them. Still, deep in my chest, an uneasiness remained. Tyler had sacrificed himself to protect not only our family, but something much bigger, something I couldn't fully comprehend. Walking through the cemetery on that clear morning, with the sun illuminating the stone paths, a question crossed my mind. Does the world beyond what we know still observe, still influence, still wait for some action from us? What if others, who were trapped between the worlds as Tyler was, still sought a way out? My heart was filled with determination and fear simultaneously, knowing that the journey of love and memory never ends, and that the next choice, the next action, could reveal something I wasn't yet ready to understand. Today, I sit on my balcony in Savannah, with the afternoon sun softly illuminating the garden and the wind bringing the smell of the flowers Tyler loved so much. Ben and Marvin are still around, discreet, but as silent pillars of support. And Dr. Harlan keeps in touch, always with his scientific patience, recording the phenomena we experience so that someday someone can understand. The house finally breathes in peace. Tyler's room has become a space of living memory, a serene sanctuary where I can feel his presence without the weight of suffocating pain. I learned with every tear and every supernatural moment that true love knows no bounds, that it crosses death, fears, and even time, and that the courage to let go is often the greatest gesture of protection and respect we can offer to those we love. If there's one lesson I take with me, it's this. Life can rob us of what we love most, but it also teaches us that preserving memory, cultivating love, and acting in silent faith turns pain into purpose. And this strength is not only mine, it belongs to all of us who carry memories, who miss it, and who move on. Therefore, I want to thank you who accompanied me here, sharing every emotion and every sigh. If this story touched your heart, leave your like. Think of it as a hug that warms and supports the channel. Sign up, as if you were accepting the invitation to the next coffee, so we can share stories and memories together again. Comment from which city you are watching. I want to feel our community growing, united by what we have lived, by what we remember, and by what moves us. And don't forget to activate the bell, so you don't miss it when the coffee is brewed again. But before you walk away, don't go yet. Listen to the next real story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story, because time does not erase. It only proves those who have never really left.